everybody. Welcome. Today is August 20th, and this is the Power Hour, the Group Sales Power Hour. I am your host, facilitator, Stuart. I'm glad you're here. And I want to welcome our special expert guest, Bonnie Raschka, to today's program. I asked Bonnie here for two reasons. I know next to nothing about E&O. Number two, she is my friend and she's the expert. Welcome, Bonnie. I'm glad you're here.
Oh, thank you so much, Stuart. Always a pleasure to join one of your Power Hour sessions with all of your agents and all the advisors and professionals that listen in on these. And it was really interesting because as we were getting started, when you asked me to do the errors and omissions, I'm all things insurance. I'm very familiar with all types of insurance. So I did specifically, because I do focus a lot on the travel insurance, that I did go through and read the 30-page policy, so that I can answer all your questions.
Wow. You realize you could be the second person ever, aside from the attorney who wrote it, to ever read it, all 30 pages.
That's right. That's right.
All right, everybody. Most of you here with us today are group boot camp members. I had some seats available, and I did open it up to a handful of people who are with us in the Group Sales Success Summit Facebook group. So we do have some guests here. If you're a guest here, I'll just tell you quickly how it works. This is not a webinar, friends. This is an Ask Anything hour, if you will. Although we're going to try to stay focused on E&O. And I have some questions already queued up. I want to thank all of you who sent your questions in advance so we can get this as a start. That said, if you have a question, you have two choices. Go ahead and do your fingers do the talking. Type it in. I'm going to monitor the question board, and I will ask Bonnie these questions, and we'll get answers. She read all 30 pages of the E&O policy. If you are bold and courageous, you would like to ask the question yourself, just let me know that you want me to turn your microphone on, and I will do that. I will take it off of mute only when you request it. We'll hear your beautiful voice. We'll answer your question, then we'll put you back on mute. So let me know if you want that. Everyone, go ahead and start typing in your stuff. Let me just read here a couple of quick comments before we get started, because we've got a lot to talk about. Sandra's in the house, a boot camp member. She's got a great question. So Sandra, I've got you queued up here. Perfect. Eileen is already paying a compliment. She said CHUBB is the best.
Well, thank you.
and by the way, I'm going to give. I do want you, Bonnie. If anybody doesn't know who you are, my goodness, by now I would think everybody's met you. Just give us your 30-second elevator speech, who you are and what you do. But not yet. Hang on here. Okay. Let me see. Eileen says, and Bonnie and Beth Davies are amazing at CHUBB. So there we go. We got some testimonials. All right. Julie's got questions. Great. Jenny's in the house. Hello, Jenny. Okay, good. Questions are coming in. And okay, Bonnie, go ahead. Give us your, tell us who you are and what you do in case folks at home don't know you yet.
Well, in case anybody doesn't know me, I have been in the travel insurance industry for 23 years. I relocated from Wisconsin to Philadelphia in 2016. With that, I have been responsible for building out the CHUBB travel protection insurance programs for the leisure travel. I'm very familiar with the CHUBB policy for errors and omissions insurance, but my entire career has been insurance. So I'm really here to help answer any questions that anybody has. I'm also a very frequent traveler. So in my career, I have traveled to over 60 countries. I have been to every state in the U.S. I have done every type of travel you can imagine. I do work with my travel professionals to book everything, but very frequent traveler, very well known in the industry. And anything we can do to help answer your travel advisors' questions, that's what we're here for.
Great, Bonnie. I appreciate that. Thanks, everybody. Go ahead and start typing in your questions. I'm going to get to the ones that were sent in before as well. Bonnie, let's just kick off with this very simple question. And we kind of discussed this briefly before we went live. What is it? What's E&O Insurance?
So errors and omissions insurance is also known as professional liability insurance. And really bringing this down to a level where everybody will understand is the ultimate objective of this policy is that if you as a travel advisor or a travel professional makes a mistake and your client holds you liable, that is the purpose of the policy.
Okay.
So let me give you an example. An example, because I love examples and I love stories.
Mm-hmm.
An example would be a client comes to you and you're booking an entire reservation, you're booking their air, you're booking their cruise, you're booking their tour, and they say to you, and most people do everything now in email. So it's, I want you to book my air, my cruise, my tour, my insurance, and you find out somewhere along the way you forgot to book something. The client gets on the trip, they have a problem because something didn't get booked. They can prove they told you to book it.
Mm-hmm.
They can hold you responsible and liable for any damages.
Okay.
That's the purpose of this policy.
And as it relates to groups, I guess that liability, that risk factor increases exponentially because there are so many more people who could have been impacted by a mistake.
Yes,
all right,
absolutely.
let's start off with question one. Now, I have not put, Bonnie, these questions in any sort of order, so who knows? They may overlap, or let's just start off here. Debbie from Premier Travel Planners. My business partner and I are exploring combining under one policy rather than us both having a singular a policy each. We work under the same business name. Anything we need to be aware of?
So one of the things to keep in mind is and I'm just going to read these right from some of the policy wordings, but when you're reading the policy, it says an insured on the policy means any past or present principal, partner, owner, officer, director, or employee. So one business, one policy is really the thing to keep in mind. And I know as we go through a lot of these, a lot of the questions are probably going to come up in regards to independent contractors versus host agency. Yeah. But ultimately, one business, one policy, as long as they're defined as employees, officers, or directors.
Okay, perfect. We got it. Debbie, I hope if you're with us here now, we've got a lot of people in the room. Let me know if that answered your question. Now let's go right to Kisa from Stress Less Vacation Planning. Love the name. 2 questions, Bonnie. U.S.-based hotels typically require a signed contract with a very high attrition rate in some states. If an affinity group does not meet the minimum amount of rooms, does E&O Insurance cover the difference in the amount the agent would be held accountable for? And this is in parentheses. Real facts, even with signed contract from the group leader, how much money and time will be exhausted with small claims court. So you got that?
I did. Okay. So basically, when you're looking at this, you have to keep in mind the difference of doing business versus making a mistake.
Okay.
So in the course of doing groups and doing business, there are contracts for you to maintain. You didn't make a mistake. Right. So there's no coverage on the policy for not hitting your minimums, not making sure you're meeting the contracts that you signed. That's the course of doing business. Mm-hmm. The professional liability is you're being held liable because you made an error, an error or an omission in the policy. So in this particular situation, I don't believe there'd be coverage under the policy.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Bonnie. Kisa, I hope that was helpful. Let's go to your question number 2. And after this, I'm going to go to the boards here. Sandra, you're up first. With horror stories of agents receiving chargebacks from clients because of getting charges reversed on a credit card, is there a list of situations covered by E&O that are claimed by a client?
Well, keeping in mind, once again, that debit memos happen all the time in the travel industry. Chargeback happens all the time in the travel industry. These are not things that are covered under the errors and omissions policy because you didn't make a mistake. Ultimately, these are different types of things that you have to plan for in your business. You have to be prepared for how you're going to handle chargebacks. A lot of times when there's chargebacks, debit memos, before those take place, you have the ability to prove that the client requested the charge. I know when we get a chargeback on an insurance policy, we have a very specific procedure in place to handle those chargebacks, but they're not covered under the travel or the errors and omissions policy.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, Bonnie. I love having you on this program, Bonnie. You know it. And, that gives me, and I know everybody who's participating today, a sense of confidence. And I hope, I always like to say these three things that I promise with the Power Hour, Bonnie, because you and I both know we've been in the business a couple of years. We have agents who are relatively new. We have agents
Mm-hmm.
who've been in it as long as we have and longer, right? Three
Right.
things. Number one, we will validate stuff they may already know. Number two,
Mm-hmm.
we will remind them of something maybe they forgot. And number three, maybe give them some new ideas, teach them some new stuff, maybe, tell them something they didn't know before. And that's the beauty of
Absolutely.
what,
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing here. Okay, Sandra, who's a boot camp member, says if I go on a group trip but utilize the supplier's tour excursions, does this change my E&O?
Okay, say that one again.
Okay. If I go on a group trip but utilize the supplier tour, so basically it sounds to me, Sandra, like you're saying you're booking a group trip and you're going, you're escorting it. However, it's everything you're doing is provided by the tour operator, including the shore excursions. Does this impact her errors and omissions insurance at all? So in this case, I guess if if something went wrong on the excursion, let's say, and it was part of the tour operator, it wasn't something that Sandra, but the client wants money back or something, would Sandra have to utilize her E&O to cover that, or does she go back to the tour operator and say, hey, you messed up, you've got to make good to the client?
It's really going to come down to who actually was responsible and liable for the situation. So, so let me go through this. I want to kind of read what claimed expenses are on errors and omissions.
Okay.
Claimed expenses are a written demand against the insured, which would be the travel professional, for monetary, non-monetary damages, a civil proceeding where they're indicating there's damages due to an error, arbitration proceedings due to an error, civil, administrative, and regulatory investigations due to charges or anything for their mistakes. Ultimately, that's what they're claiming for. So when a client comes, if you helped coordinate an arrangement through the tour operator, but say you didn't coordinate it and the client told you to, is the responsibility on you as the travel professional, or is it on the tour operator? The majority of the time while you're on the actual excursion is going to be on the tour operator.
Okay.
But the number one thing I see happening the most is I told my travel advisor to do this, to book this for me, and now I got on my trip and they didn't book it. Or they booked the wrong dates for my flights, or they booked something incorrectly.
Okay.
Those are probably the most common where a client would hold them liable.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that. Sandra, I hope that helped. Please let us know. Part and parcel to that, I'm going to ask you a question, Bonnie. And this came up in our last Power Hour, which is really what inspired today's Power Hour topic of errors and omissions insurance and bringing you here. One of the key things I preach in group sales boot camp is that our agents, to be successful in the affinity group market, cannot simply sell the off-the-shelf, bare-bones, stripped-down product. Because if they do, then why does a client need them? They could just book it any place, right? So I say create a package, a more inclusive package, meaning you're going to be including some excursions, maybe a pre-post, maybe special dinners, right? And so the question came up that somebody read that once you start to create, your own product, including it in, that you become perhaps a tour operator. So that's one issue, and part and parcel to that is it could change the necessity for errors and omissions insurance. Does that make sense? And can you provide some clarity around that whole topic?
Yeah, I think the main thing to keep in mind is that when you're looking at your errors and omissions policy, there's a statement defined in here called professional services. And of the professional services, it indicates that these are the services you're set to perform. In the type of errors and omissions policy you purchase, it then is added. So, example, I'm looking at the professional services, and it says specifically travel agents is what's listed as to what I can do. So I think where the confusion comes in is, am I as a travel professional? Am I doing FIT travel, where I'm just helping coordinate a whole bunch of different things and making it a unique package? Or am I truly becoming the tour operator? And truly becoming the tour operator is you as the travel company is defining your own cancellation conditions. You're defining all of your own things. You're scheduling your own group escorts, people to escort all your tours. You're doing all of that. If I'm just taking, I want a little bit of Norwegian Cruise Lines, I want a little bit of Abercrombie and Kent, I want a little bit of GoGo, and I'm making a FIT package, that fits under the travel agent definition. If I'm going out there and actually saying, no, I'm going to figure out this hiking trip and I'm going to plan everything beginning to end and establish my own cancellation conditions, then you should make sure tour operator is included on your professional liability.
That really clarifies it very well. I appreciate that because even for me, in April 2017, Bonnie, I did a partial ship charter on the Ama Christina. It was friends and family group that I did. And because it was a partial ship charter, I got to create my own terms and conditions, my own payment schedule, my own cancellation policies. So in fact, it probably would have been a good idea for me to have my own. Yeah. All right, let's go to Ellie here. And then I'm coming to you. Julie, you're next. Ellie, because we got a lot of questions, Bonnie. This is great. Should you have your own policy if you are an independent contractor and booking under a small host agency?
Oh, I love this question because it really comes down to, what do you define as an independent contractor? What do you define as a host agency? Why do I say that? I can be an independent agent of a travel company and not have my own business, meaning I'm signing up just to be an agent, maybe commission only based type agent without creating my own business. A lot of host agencies that are out there, everybody is, as the independent contractors, creating their own business. So are you an LLC? Are you a sole proprietor business? Are you a business or are you truly an independent travel agent? So let me explain the difference here. If I'm working with a host agency and I decide I'm going to get my own LLC so I don't have the business liability of somebody coming after me and going after me on a personal level, and I create my own tax identification number and I'm truly setting up as a business under a host, that host agency's errors and omissions policy would likely allow me to pay extra to be under their policy. So if I'm an independent agent, I can be added on. Most of them charge like an extra $10 for every agent to be added on as an independent agent. If I'm a separate business, I should consider a separate policy.
Separate
policy. Does that help?
Yeah, it definitely helps. And Ellie, if you're here, sorry, I can't go look at all the names right now. Tell me, please, if this has helped you. It makes sense to me. It does make sense. And that's certainly a conversation to be had with your host, because I've got to believe if they're a host agency, they got to know their stuff, and they should have a little operations Bible, if you will, so you know whether you need it or not, if it can be purchased extra or not, and how that works. That's part of their responsibility.
All the host agencies are going to know. Depending on, that's where a lot of the confusion comes in, is an independent agent versus an independent contractor. An independent contractor traditionally sets up their own business and is hosted by somebody else. An independent agent is, I just want to be a commission only type employee, but not with employee benefits. Independent agents can get it probably for an extra $10 added under their agency they're working with. a host with a separate business, you should have your own policy.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, Julie, I promise you're up next. Here we go. Bonnie. E&O coverage for a group. Many agents on here are probably hosted, which is what we just talked about. But if you have a group of 20 or 40 or 60, what do you suggest for an E&O coverage? So the assumption here is that you are hosted, and this is looks like it could be a small to large size group. I don't know if you're just going to say that, it's hard to know because what are the terms that the host is offering? What's the coverage they offer? But maybe more of the question is, are there different levels of E&O coverage? Should you pay more based on the group size?
Right. Well, one of the things to keep in mind is let's talk about the basics of E&O. Professional liability policies, errors and omissions policies, they're priced based on the size of your business, how many bookings you are actually doing a year, the number of agents you have employed working for you, the deductible that you select, and the limit of coverage you're looking for.
Okay.
So ultimately, when you're going out there, you're not buying just errors and omissions policy on a group by group basis. You're buying it for your business.
Right.
When you're buying it for your business, you determine your deductible. You determine, so an example, I'm looking at one right now. The limit of liability is $1 million for each claim with $1 million aggregate limit for the year with a $5,000 disciplinary proceedings claims expense, which is your legal expenses, with a $1,000 deductible. You basically establish this, and then when these are quoted to you, it's based on how much business you actually do and how many people are insuring. If you have a business with one person, it's going to be a lot lower cost than a business with 50 people. So really, when you go through the application process, you're doing it for all of the business you're booking.
So Julie has a follow-up question, which I think you just answered. When you're purchasing an E&O policy, what should you look for? So basically, there's a formula. You just answer the questions: the size of your business, the revenue business, they get all this kind of stuff, and there you go. It's almost like buying car insurance. And correct me if I'm wrong here. How many miles do you think you'll be driving this year? Right. Do you want full glass replacement or whatever? And so it's formulaic. It's not as if you can say, well, I want to have twice the policy, because that's not necessary. It has to be based on business numbers. Is that right? Right.
Yeah. And the other thing, any insurance, every insurance company, and there's multiple errors and omissions professional liability insurers out there in the travel industry. Every company has general exclusions. So when you're looking at the policy, you should always look to see what are the things being excluded. You also need to make sure that under the professional services category, that it includes travel agents and or tour operators if you're in the tour operator business.
Okay, so there you go. There's some help to make sure to look what it covers. Read every policy to see which policy fits your business needs, because maybe you're not going to be doing any tour operating, if you will. Maybe you will, and that's going to be important to you. And this, I think this next question from Linda, hey Linda, falls under here too, because we're talking about the host agency thing. Linda asks, do you need your own errors and omissions if your host agency says they provide that?
If the host agency is providing it, you should ask them for a copy of the policy. You should also make sure when you're looking at the policy that they are providing to you is in the definition of insured means. So just like the policy I'm looking at right now, it's very clearly defined that the people included under this policy are past, present, principal, partner, officer, director, trustee, or employee. Then it says an independent contractor who are natural persons, but only with the respect of professional services provided on behalf of the named insured. So that would be the host agency would be the named insured in this case. You want to make sure that their policy, and that's why I say nobody likes to read the 30 pages. you really need to look at that definition. Are you part of that definition, and ask for a copy of the policy?
Yep. Perfect. Great. Julie, Linda, I hope that helps. Julie has, I'm going to one more question, Julie, then I'm going to get back to our paper here. Diane, I have Diane and Becky's questions up next. And Julie's clarifying here. Is it for making a mistake only, or would it also be for an accident on the trip? And I know the answer to that. It's for making a mistake only. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm going to double check here, but I believe, so one of the things, keep in mind, it's making a mistake. If you think about anything that a customer might come back and hold you responsible for, if they come back and say, the reason I fell down the stairs while I was on that trip is you put me in a property that was under full renovation. Are they going to hold you responsible for that because you put them in that particular property, you recommended that particular property, and did that cause the slip and fall? They could. So you have to really think from a customer perspective. Am I going to come after my travel agent and say, this is your fault because you took this action? That's what's covered under errors and omissions.
Very good. I like how, because there's such a fuzzy area, you know, and we talk for hours about what's in that fuzzy area, but that was really great. Thank you. Kisa is thanking you. Thank you. Very helpful. Catherine has just a follow-up comment to that. It says, if you make a mistake and must use the E&O, will you be canceled or not covered when it's time to renew?
You know, I would say that varies by insurance company in regards to what their process and procedure is. I wouldn't say it, and it's going to be dependent on how severe was the mistake, to whether an insurance company is going to cancel you or not. It's just like car insurance. If I have a car and I get in 5 accidents in a year, I can guarantee you I'm getting canceled that next year. If I only have 1 accident every 10 years, probably not going to get canceled. So it really comes down to how frequent are your claims on errors and omissions, how often are you making mistakes, and every company is going to have different policy and procedures. Yep,
makes perfect sense. Catherine, thanks. Great question. Sandra, who we answered earlier, says thank you. Karen D's in the house. Welcome, Karen D. I'm glad you're here. Let me go to Diane's question now, okay? For those of us who escort groups, is our E&O a blanket policy, or do we need a separate policy for more coverage?
If you escort a group.
If you're escorting. Now this is interesting because, you know, we talked about defining E&O as if you make a mistake. So this would mean that you'd be escorting, and I mean, there's regular travel insurance naturally, but can you make a mistake while you're escorting? And can a client come back and sue you or ask for money back? Or is E&O just in the arrangement, the setting up, the acquisition, the planning of the trip?
You know, I would gather it's going to be how escort is set up. If escort could fit within the independent contractor definition of professional services being performed on behalf of the insured policyholder. But that's a good question. I'm going to go back and ask our underwriter on that one because I'm not 100% certain. So I'm going to ask that one and get that back to you.
Beautiful. That's a great question, Diane. Thank you for sending it in. Now, Becky has a follow-up similar to Diane's question, which is if you use multiple suppliers to put a trip or a group together, do you have to have a certain type of coverage other than the E&O that most agents have? And my guess, the answer is going to be no, because it's going to protect you from mistakes, whether it's 1 supplier or 12 suppliers involved in the package.
Right. Okay. Right. If you're going and you're putting together the air, the cruise, the tour, the shore excursion, and using all different suppliers with that would all be covered under your traditional E&O.
Yep. Yep. And, you know, going back to Diane's question, if you're escorting group, that's probably a different kind of insurance that you want to make sure you have. It could just be the standard, you know, travel insurance for yourself.
Right.
But for instance, and I just want to bring this forward, that me as a speaker, okay, I have I have insurance for me as a speaker so that if I'm on stage and if something happens to somebody in the room that I somehow cause or I could be named, that protects me, which I never thought that would be needed, but it is. So I've got to believe there's probably some kind of, I don't know, extra special protection if you are.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
Okay. So that you're gonna look into, follow up on, and
I'm
folks,
going to look into that. Hmm.
yeah, we're gonna post Bonnie's follow-up so we make sure you get that. Okay, Cheryl's here. Hello, Cheryl. I'm traveling with my group as the tour director. Here we go. Same issue. Do I need to include that profession with my E&O?
I don't think under the professional services, if you have travel agent listed, it should cover all the duties a travel agent would be responsible to do. I don't think you have to have it separate listed.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Because it could be a duty, a task of a typical travel
Right.
agent.
Right.
Julie comes back with a clarif. Cheryl, I hope that helped. And we are going to have follow-up on that. Julie says, so clarifying, seems like most hosts carry $1 million in coverage. Is that enough for the group?
Well, you want to keep, okay, so yeah, most hosts do provide $1 million.
Right.
But I don't know on the host policy if the host policy is per agent at that $1 million or is that a total cap? Because the policy I'm looking at for our professional liability is this is based on the actual named insured as the agent. And with an agent being insured, because every host agency, if you should be able to add on and get an agent. You have to make sure with the host agency that you're added on as an agent to be covered.
Okay.
That I know, and most companies charge an extra so much for that to happen.
Okay.
And that's where you should be getting a copy of that policy. So I'm not sure if that particular host policy says $1 million per agent or $1 million per policy.
So per policy, yeah. Great. Thank you for splitting hairs there, so we know that there's no general answer to that. It depends on the policy. Karen's in the house. Karen's got a question. Karen D, thank you, Karen. Please ask. Okay, on my culinary tours, my concern was always, what if my chef got sick at the last minute and we had to cancel the trip? All the tour operator group travel policies are usually canceled for a medical reason. That's great for the chef, but it has nothing to do with my guests. They're not sick. So the burning question was, how would I give these people their money back? In this case, if the chef cancels for whatever reason, because the chef is the highlight, the star. The only thing I could come up with was to have the guests add on the cancel for any reason addition, and maybe I'd pay for that and build it into the cost of the trip. Any other solutions I'm not thinking of?
Yeah, your number one thing is if you do have somebody hosting a group and that's the only reason the people are coming, you have to come up with what your solution is with those customers if that person backs out on you. And one of those options is cancel for any reason, cancel anytime type policies that are in the industry, but it's expensive to do those. I know some companies do have on their group policies a cancel for any reason option, but they're not 100%. But it's part of doing business. So it is a very painful thing because on travel insurance, now that we've crossed the border of travel insurance questions, this is a travel insurance question. On the travel insurance policies, almost every travel insurance carrier out there says in their traveling companion definition that the group leader or the purpose of the group is not included as a companion. So if your culinary chef gets sick, the rest of your group can't cancel for that reason without cancel for any reason.
Yeah, that's big. You know, that is definitely a big issue, Karen. I'm glad you brought it forward. You know, there's an upside and a downside. When you've got a big shot celebrity, whether it's an athlete or whether it's a publisher or a celebrity, whatever it is, there's always the risk that they're going to get a better offer. Something else is going to come along. Their agent's going to say, forget it. We're going to come do this TV show, this movie, whatever. And you'll find, and I've seen this, that in order to get one of these big shots, if you will, I say that with all due respect, you'll have to sign a contract with them that says, and you'll only be able to say in your marketing, scheduled to appear, especially with like a musical artist too, or a comedian or whatever, scheduled. So once, if they make you sign that document, everybody, that says scheduled to appear, and in their 30-page document of their contract with you, that they have an out that whether they make you sign that or not, you've got to be prepared with a backup plan. And we just heard from Bonnie that CFAR is not going to work for the consumer who says, "Oh, Chef Stu's not going to be there. I don't want to go." Am I saying that correctly, Bonnie?
Well, if they pay for the cancel for any reason, they're going to get 75% back from most of the carriers. They're not going to get 100% back. 100%. But you should leave that up to each client if they want that to pay for that. One of the things, I was taking off my insurance hat when listening to this question, is when you're developing your groups, when you have a schedule to appear, how do you have a backup plan? Do you have 3 different celebrities coming? Do you have 2 people coming? How do you protect yourself when you're building these types of groups? And I think that's more of a question for when you're developing a group, how do you have a backup plan if one person doesn't come? You don't want your entire group to cancel.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And I've shared this example before, that in a personal story, years ago, I was vice president of group sales with the World Travel Holdings. And I put together a New York Football Giants cruise. And lo and behold, our cruise was, let's say, departing in, I forget what month in the spring. They won the Super Bowl that year. And guess what? All the players who had signed up to be on the cruise, they weren't going to be in town. Guess where they were going to be? They were going to be in Hawaii. All right. And I'm like, oh my goodness. But thankfully, we had covered ourselves, that scheduled to appear, because we ran it through legal. And we also, now get this as a possible solution, everybody. You can work with the organization to say, look, you're promising us these people or this person or these players. It helps if you're working through an organization, a team. And if they are unable to attend for circumstances beyond their control, however it's worded, we will provide like players. And they did. I mean, we promised, I don't remember, maybe 10 players. And well, we had 1 or 2 of the originals, and the other 8 were others. And the fans were disappointed, but it still worked out. But there's a high level of risk there, especially when you're dealing with an athlete. So that it's one thing if there's one chef and he's the chef or she's the chef, but to your point, Bonnie, can you have 2 or 3? So just in case one bags out, you've still got 2, and you can replace the third. It may not be as big a name, but you're protecting yourself.
Right. Yeah, that's part of just doing business when you're getting into that type of a group trip.
Yeah, and let me go forward here with errors and omissions. If you don't put, Bonnie, keep me honest here. If you don't put in your contract with the traveler, with the consumer, if you don't put in the contract, scheduled to appear, if they don't appear, we will have a similar or whatever, and you're sort of guaranteeing it, and that chef doesn't show up, does that?
You could be held liable.
You're liable. You could be held liable. So very important. Okay.
Well, and that's why it's really important when people are setting up groups and doing contracts, you really need to seek legal advice. You need to talk to a lawyer. You need to have any contracts you're doing, anything you're putting out there, you need to have that reviewed. So definitely don't, I know a lot of people skirt around it and they make their own stuff all day long, but if you're actually doing a contract, you should make sure you're seeking legal advice.
I Couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. Karen added on here, I didn't sleep a lot for those 12 years just before our trip, and I could never get a good solution to the question if he cancels. Most of the clients are expecting a 100% back refund. Everyone suggests a backup plan. There is no backup plan. Everyone is going on that trip because of the chef. So I don't blame you for losing sleep, Karen. I'm sorry. Okay, let's see here. LaDonna asks, will the insurance company let you read a copy of the policy before purchasing? So if you're going to go purchase through CHUBB, let's say, an errors and omissions policy, I would imagine you can get a hold of that 30-page document, review it, and decide if it's right for you.
Oh, absolutely. So any insurance provider should be providing you a copy. It's going to say sample or draft on it until you've actually booked the policy. But just with anything, any type of insurance, if travel insurance, errors and omissions insurance, I don't care what type of insurance it is, you can ask to view a copy of the policy wording before you actually purchase the policy.
That's great. And you know, friends, if you have an attorney friend or somebody who, you know, sometimes you want to spend a couple of bucks to have somebody who knows more than you about something tell you this is for you or not. I do this because I want to sleep at night. So sometimes it makes sense having a professional who will see things that you may not see, especially when it comes to insurance. Now, LaDonna has a follow-up. Can you get a general liability policy as a rider on your E&O policy?
I don't see why you wouldn't be able to, but I wouldn't. I'd have to double check in regards to our exact. I'm only looking at our exact travel agent policy right now, and not looking at all of them. I'm sure you probably can either get a general liability and then a professional one, or back and forth.
Yeah, that would make sense too. Okay, let me go. We've got more questions coming in. This is great. Thanks everybody for being here. We're past the halfway mark. Let me make a couple of very quick announcements. Hang on. Welcome here if you're a guest, and of course welcome to my group sales boot campers. I want to remind you that our next session is September 5th. I had to change the time. I always do 11 to noon Eastern, but I've been asked to go speak to students at the University of Memphis, and my topic is going to be, get this, Bonnie, it's going to be social wellness. Okay, social wellness. She's a friend of mine. She's a health coach, a wellness coach, and she knows that I'm an integrative health coach as well, but also a business coach. Can I come talk to young people about social wellness? Bonnie, I can talk for about 7 hours on that, but I have 40 minutes. So friends, that's why I had to change the time on September 5th. So it's going to be 3 to 4 Eastern. So I hope you can still make it. But you know, you always get the recording. It's okay. Also, everyone who's in Group Sales Boot Camp, and if you're here through Group Sales Success Summit, if you bought GSSS 1 or GSSS 2 for keeps, you can get CEU credits. Bonnie, I don't know if you heard the amazing, huge news, big news. The Travel Institute has now certified Group Sales Boot Camp and our summits.
Wow.
Which is super cool for anyone who's who's earning a CTA, CTC, CDIE, so forth and so on. Okay, those are my two announcements. There we go. And now we're going to go to all seasons travel. Here's two questions for you. Just a general, who sells E&O insurance to agents?
You know, there's a few different companies out there. I know CHUBB has a professional liability insurance policy. Berkshire Hathaway has one. Aon has one available, but there's probably 5 or 6 carriers out there that have errors and omissions policies. The thing to keep in mind is our company, CHUBB, calls it professional liability coverage. Okay. So always ask for professional liability coverage or errors and omissions, because every company might call it something different.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Cool. Okay, and question number 2 from All Seasons Travel. Let's see. What is a price range we can expect to pay? And what is required to be considered for coverage by the insurance agency? So that's a 2-part question here. What is a price range we can expect to pay? And then what is required to be considered for coverage? So I guess you have to provide, so part two of that, you have to provide proof that you're a travel agent requesting this kind of coverage.
Right. Yeah, you know, within the process, you're going to go ahead and provide your W-9 information. You're going to indicate how large your company is, how many employees you have, officers, directors, how big your business is. So within that, then you're going to provide your selection of how much do you want to have coverage for, and what are you able to tolerate for a deductible. So deductibles do vary on all these plans. And of course, whenever I get the price range on this, it's just like general travel insurance. Everybody will say, how much is it for travel insurance policy? Well, it all depends on how much you paid for the trip. So ultimately, it's something you need to consider. I've seen these policies range anywhere from a few $100s to over $1,000. The average policy is probably going to be somewhere in between $300 and $500. But ultimately, it comes down to too many factors. How much coverage you want, how much your deductible is, and how big is your business.
Right. Just like car insurance, like homeowners insurance, there's so many variables. And basically, you can, the more coverage you have, the lower the initial deduction, that you can go up and down. You can actually control it if you want. Good stuff. Okay, Marissa has a question here. Let me read it. What if your supplier files for bankruptcy and closes its doors, leaving clients that have paid for the trip with unpaid services? This has happened with a few suppliers recently that closed their doors. Is this something E&O would assist the booking agency with?
I don't know how you'd be liable. You wouldn't be the person liable. It would be the person that actually went bankrupt. However, let's cross over from errors and omissions back to travel insurance.
Okay.
Third-party travel insurance policies generally include a benefit when you purchase your policy within 15, 21, 30 days of booking your payment for financial default of the airline, cruise line, tour operator. So crossing back over I don't foresee this being something under errors and omissions, because it'd be under the errors and omissions of the company that actually went bankrupt. It wouldn't be your responsibility. You wouldn't be liable for that. But travel insurance policies, most of them have that policy feature if you're buying the insurance through a third-party insurance carrier. I know ours is, if you buy within 2 weeks of initial payment, you get the financial default coverage on our top 2 plans. Okay. So just pay attention to that coverage is available in the travel insurance policy, which then allows you to go back to your client saying, I offered you travel insurance. You said no. That is a benefit of coverage to you.
Right. Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you, Bonnie, for clarifying that. Marissa, great question. Cheryl just posted a thank you that she's looking forward to that follow-up that we had talked about before about escorting. Julie says thank you. Let's see. LaDonna says thank you. This is great. You're most welcome. Thank Bonnie. I'm just facilitating here. LaDonna says that's great on the Travel Institute certification. Congratulations. Thank you, LaDonna. I appreciate that. Here's Nancy. Hi, Stuart. My question. How do we get protection as an agent from errors of tour operators? I had an issue where the tour operator's email was hacked and the wire transfer was sent to the wrong person. Theft by deception is what it was called by the police. My E&O policy is with Hathaway. They would have covered if this was my error and the client lost out. They did not. I lost the money in my bank, and my bank, the wire company, the tour operator, all had no responsibility. You want me to read it again, or did you get that?
Yeah, I want to read the first part of it again, because I'm trying to figure out why the tour operator wouldn't have responsibility if they were the ones with the breach.
Yeah. How do we get protection as an agent from errors of tour operators? I had an issue where the tour operator's email was hacked and the wire transfer was sent to the wrong person. Theft by deception is what it was called by the police. My E&O policy is with Hathaway. They would have covered it if it was my error, but they did not. Yeah.
I don't understand why the error wouldn't have been back on the tour operator's policy. I don't know why. If they made the mistake, you would think that the onus would be on their responsibility, because it wouldn't be your fault as a travel professional if they made that type of a mistake. But yeah, I agree in regards to Berkshire's response to you on this is it wasn't your mistake. So therefore there wasn't any coverage on that policy. I'm surprised it wouldn't have gone back to the tour operator.
That's a tricky one. Wow, Nancy, I'm sorry to hear that happen. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Marissa has a follow-up to our earlier question. Hey, friends, we've only got 9 minutes left, so now's the time. If you've always had this burning question, now's the time to ask it. We've got Bonnie in the house here who's going to take it on. So bring it. 9 minutes left. All right, Marissa says, but if the client issues a chargeback, I know we talked about this earlier, but if the client issues a chargeback and we accepted direct payment from the client operating as a tour operator for a local DMC. Do we remember the original question? Do I need to go back and connect it?
I do. No.
Okay.
I remember.
Okay.
So basically, it's part of the fact of doing business that when you go to charge a client's credit card for any costs, travel-related costs, whatever it might be, you need to make sure you have permission from that client to make that charge. So example, CHUBB, on our insurance policies, we get chargebacks probably one a week. Most of the time it's because the spouse didn't know their spouse purchased the trip or insurance, and they didn't recognize the charge.
Okay.
When you're going through that chargeback process, you as the travel professional has the opportunity to go back to the credit card company and say, here's all the documentation proving they authorized me to do that charge. So just because the client did a chargeback doesn't mean it's going to be honored. It's up to you to be able to prove you had their permission to charge their card. And it's just a fact of doing business because there's no error that took place. And unfortunately, you have to be prepared for those because it does happen a certain percentage of the time.
Yeah, it happens with me on occasion. Drives me crazy, but just kind of along those same lines, friends, that when you buy something from me, whether it's my books or boot camp or whatever, or the summit, on your credit card statement, it'll say SLC ETC Corporation, which is my corporate name. I don't mark it under that name, Bonnie. It's SLC. So sometimes I get a chargeback because they look through it, or maybe their spouse looks, or their accountant looks through it and says, who is this? What is this? And it's a chargeback. And guess what? The onus is on me to say, whoa.
To prove.
They do it. Yeah, it's a process that it could take months and months and months for me to get my money back. And normally when I contact the person, the agent or whoever is, they're like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. What can I do? I'm like, at this point, nothing. They can't like pull it back. I've never had that successful, but friends, it is what it is. It's what you sign up for.
Well, and look at your side is nobody might connect your name to the charge because you don't mark it under that name. Ours actually goes through, it's CHUBB TVL-INS, and we get 3 to 4 calls a week asking us, can you verify what this charge is, and chargebacks that we have to go back and prove that they authorized the charge. Yeah.
So it happens. It happens all the time.
It does.
We just need to be prepared for it. Karen's here, and she's saying, Karen D, thanks for bringing Bonnie on. It looks like my initial discussion a couple of weeks ago. Yes, that's what inspired this, Karen. That's what inspired this, and we do have follow-up information, friends, coming about if you're escorting the group, if you become more the tour operator, you're escorting. We're going to find out more about that. This is a follow-up from Nancy. I tried to get the tour operator to own the issue, but they also called it theft. So it's like theft. So it's, in Nancy's case, everyone just kind of washed their hands of it, and Nancy got stuck holding the debt.
That's too bad.
That is.
That's too bad.
Yeah, sorry to hear that, Nancy.
It's a very unfortunate thing when people are not taking accountability to where that mistake actually transpired. And there are times that the travel professional ends up in that situation where nobody's accepting accountability and it falls back on your lap.
Yep, absolutely. I want to make a quick statement here, and then Bonnie, I want to come back to you. Friends, we've got just a few minutes left for your last minute questions, so stick around. Class not dismissed yet. And then I'm going to ask Bonnie if, after I speak, if Bonnie would just give us a sort of a recap, whether it's E&O or general travel insurance stuff. This is going to be my question, Bonnie, so you have time to prepare. You've been around the block a couple times. You see the most frequent mistakes that agents make, or the most frequent questions, but just general travel insurance too, that you just wish agents did a better job at or took more advantage of, and it would just as I like to say, number one, add value and convenience to them and their clients. Number two, reduce stress and risk. And number three, just, transform the entire experience from good to great. So that I'm going to leave you with that. Maybe you'll point out a couple of things that you would love to share, that you would normally share on stage if at a conference. So what I want to tell you, friends, is that, in this business, I hear this a lot from travel professionals, that to Karen's point, you lose sleep sometimes because this is a big deal. There's a lot of moving parts, and whether you just book an off-the-shelf product for somebody or you're enhancing it, you're creating a more inclusive package. You have every right to be nervous and concerned. It's what you do. However, it should be offset by your confidence. And if you have a teammate, a tag team person who you can say, hey, do me a favor, review this and I'll review yours, you can catch it, so have a backup if you can, or a colleague to review if it's a complex thing. But the cost of purchasing, if you need to buy yourself, if it's not under your host, E&O or liability, professional liability, whatever it is, it's an investment in your business. It's an investment in peace, PEAC, of mind that we all have to do, so that we know that if we do goof, we're going to be covered, and we're all human. We all goof. I'm good for at least one wonderful goof a week. Thankfully, it doesn't cost. It's not on somebody's vacation. So I am humbled by what you all do. I admire the responsibility you have, but you're in this business. Nobody forced you to be in it. So, and I know you're all here because you take it seriously and you want to understand, and I really think, Bonnie, thank you for really defining specifically what E&O is versus, errors and omissions versus, regular travel insurance or company insurance, professional liability, and everyone calls it different names. All right, now I'm going to turn to you. You've got 2.5 minutes. Give us a couple of takeaways, friends, Bonnie, for all of our friends who are with us.
The number one thing with you being in business as travel professionals is you have to decide what level of insurance you want to have. And ultimately, it's always your choice. So what risk are you willing to take as a travel professional? How much can you afford to lose if you make a mistake? That's the whole purpose of professional liability insurance. And we know that it's becoming, unfortunately, this world is becoming a more of, it's your fault, you're my travel professional, you should have made sure this was taken care of for me. But keep in mind, not all of that falls under what a professional liability policy has. So we know everybody makes mistakes. It all comes down to life. How do you respond to that mistake?
Right.
What is your response? But how you can prepare yourself is documentation. You've got to get the he said, she said out of the conversation. The more you document, the more you put in writing, then you have something to go back to. Yes, I typed that in incorrectly. Yes, I told you your flights were booked for this date and time when I booked them for a week, the wrong week. If you have documentation, you have something to look at saying, was it my mistake or was it the client's mistake? Because everybody is going to come back to their travel professional and say, you're my travel professional, you should have made sure this didn't happen. But if you don't have documentation to say, but that's what you told me to book, that's what you wanted me to book, documentation not only with your clients, documentation with your suppliers. And that is why I truly believe with CHUBB that every travel professional that says to me, how does this coverage work? I have told everybody on my sales team, put it in writing, because I want the documentation of what we told you to tell your client, because that way there's proof, there's something. But if you continue down the path of he said, she said, the travel professional is not going to, they're going to lose. It's unfortunate, but if you got to get the he said, she said out of there. And ultimately with that, you have errors and omissions insurance, you've got travel insurance you can offer to your clients. Make sure your clients are signing off in writing. Did they want it or didn't they want it? Did they want everything you booked for them? Have the proof. So when you have your chargebacks and your debit memos, you have something saying, but they told me to charge this, because that's not something covered under errors and omissions. the more documentation you have, the better success you'll have in the long run.
That's a great tip, everybody. Bonnie, thank you for sharing that. Linda has posted here. Thank you, Stuart and Bonnie. This has been very helpful. Great, Linda. I'm happy. And I just want to leave you with this one quick thought that I'm going to bid you to that perhaps rather, you can do it in an email, respond back and this kind of stuff and save the email string, of course. But what if you used a form program? And I use JotForm. Almost everybody knows that. And you actually create a form that it goes to them, they fill it out, and they click confirm. They get a copy. I did that with my cruise. Okay, you've accepted this air. Click accept. They get a copy, I get a copy. So when they click accept, it's almost an e-signature. What can you do, friends?
Right.
Okay, to get an e-signature. I just had to do this because I was involved in a mortgage situation. Oh my gosh, like 42,000 e-signatures. But guess what? I didn't have to print anything. E-signatures work. So do something to CYA. I'm not going to leave it at that. Hey, Bonnie, thanks for being here. I appreciate you.
Oh, thanks so much. It's always a pleasure being part of your Power Hours, and I appreciate everybody joining today. All the questions, if there's anything we can do to further help you with insurance, just let us know.
Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks, everybody. Happy sales.